What earthly treasures have we got stored up for our runner-up, Frank?
Well, for our runner-up today, it's a huge house upon the rock.
Oh no, I'm rich! Woe unto me!
Hey, come on, riches are a blessing.
Either way, Craig, you be sure to sell that new possession of yours and give to the poor. Now, a solo challenge round. There are 8 questions, and you have to get them all correct. Here we go. Question 1. Did the temple curtain rip before or after Jesus died?
Yes.
Correct. Who put the gorgeous purple robe on Jesus? Herod's soldiers or Pilate's soldiers?
Yes, they did.
Correct. Did Jesus curse the fig tree before or after driving the merchants from the temple?
Before or after?
Correct. Either one will do, so good answer there. Given that Quirinius became the governor of Syria 9 years after King Herod's death, was Jesus born during the reign of Herod or during the governorship of Quirinius?
Both?
Miraculously, yes. You're doing very well. When the women arrived at Jesus' tomb, was the tomb opened or closed?
Yes, it was.
Correct. Did Judas die by hanging himself or by falling over in a field and having his midsection burst open, spilling his guts everywhere?
Yes, that's right.
Correct. And our final question. Is God the author of confusion?
No!
Correct!
The authors of confusion are the people who misrepresent the Bible to try to make it appear as though parts of it contradict each other.
I know, right? Don't those people have anything better to do? They must hate God so much. Congratulations, Ken. Well done. An excellent achievement. And now, your prize. You ready? You've won a lifetime of believing our promise of something for which there is no evidence and that you won't actually get until after you're dead. In fact, there's pretty much no good reason at all to expect that it's even remotely real. But please, just take our word for it and live the rest of your life imagining it and feeling happy.
Now for the very final video debunking this little quiz show. Contradiction number 21, and we're going to go all the way to 30. They claim that Matthew 27 and Mark 15, the temple curtain ripped after Jesus died. And then they say, well, now hold up. In Luke 23, the temple curtain ripped before Jesus died. Luke's gospel does not state that the veil was torn before Christ's death, but rather, and I'm quoting word for word right here, and the sun was darkened, and the veil of the temple was rent in the midst. The text only notes how the event of the veil being torn occurred around the time of Christ's death, around that time, implying the same as the other gospel accounts, just more vague. Apparent contradiction number 22, Matthew 27 and John 19, they say that Pilate's soldiers put the purple robe on Jesus, but in Luke 23 it says that Herod's soldiers put the purple robe on Jesus. But which one was it? Was it Herod's soldiers or was it Pilate's soldiers that placed the robe upon Jesus? Well, they're both correct. The timing of the events tell us that Herod's soldiers first placed the robe upon Jesus in a state of mockery, then sent him back to Pilate, where Pilate had him beaten, and in order to beat Jesus, they had to remove the robe, of course, resulting in the soldiers placing the robe back upon Christ to be brought before the people and sentenced. Apparent contradiction number 23, they say that Matthew 21, Jesus cursed the fig tree. Now, this one's very interesting. I learned something right here. This was fascinating. They say that Matthew 21, Jesus cursed the fig tree after cleansing the temple, but Mark 11 says that Jesus cursed the fig tree before cleansing the temple. Both accounts are correct. Jesus actually spoke to the fig tree twice. The first time in Mark's account to pronounce judgment. Pay close attention to this. The first time he speaks to the fig tree before he goes into the temple to cleanse it, and he's pronouncing judgment upon it. The second time in Matthew's account to execute judgment, where it actually dies immediately. And this is fascinating, even being remarkable among the commentators. The fruitless fig tree represented a faithless Israel. The two encounters were symbolic of Christ's first appearance of pronouncing judgment 2,000 years ago to them, followed by the execution of said judgment in a later time. Apparent contradiction number 25, in Matthew 2, it says that Jesus was born during the governorship of Herod. In Luke 2, it says that Jesus was born during the governorship of Cyrenius. They say that Cyrenius, he did not cast a census upon the land until 6 A.D. So how could Jesus have been born? And we believe that he was born around 4 B.C. Notice the wording of Luke's account. The verse in Luke mentions, and I quote directly from Luke, And this taxing was first made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. Notice the mention of first made. Cyrenius actually had 2 census taken. The idea in the original language is that this was the first enrollment, some years before the second, which is more widely known. Using a census for taxation was common in ancient Rome, so Luke called this one the first to distinguish it from the well-known enrollment in AD 6. And this is how it's believed to have actually played out. Augustus, who was the Roman emperor at the time, Augustus sent Cyrenius, an active, enterprising man, to take the census. At that time, he was a Roman senator. Afterward, he was made governor of the same country and received the title which Luke gives him. He became known as Cyrenius, the governor of Syria, later on. Apparent contradiction number 26. In Matthew 28:2, Jesus' tomb was opened after the women arrived, but in Luke 24:2, the tomb was already opened. So which one is it? Matthew fills in the details that explain why the women found the grave open already. They were surprised that the stone had been rolled away whenever they first arrived. They had not been expecting this. Matthew is not saying the tomb was closed. He is explaining how the heavy stone was moved, past tense. Alleged contradiction number 27. So how did Judas actually die? Judas Iscariot, after he betrayed Christ. Matthew 27 says that Judas hanged himself, but in Acts 1:18, Simon Peter says that Judas died by falling over in a field with his guts hanging everywhere. Both are correct. Judas Iscariot first hanged himself after betraying Jesus. Then, after 40 days, which is when Simon Peter is talking about it, then, after 40 days of his body hanging, decaying, and being picked at by the birds, the corpse fell to the ground, bursting on impact once the rope was loosened. Apparent contradiction number 28. Luke 6:24 claims riches are bad, but in Psalm 112, it claims that riches are a blessing. The message in Luke 6 is not that riches in themselves are evil. Notice the context of what Jesus is saying. Not that riches in themselves are evil, but the rich people who have their hearts set upon such earthly elements will perish with them. Alleged contradiction number 29 in 1 Corinthians 14:33, and we're coming to the close of the video right here. 1 Corinthians 14:33, God is not the author of confusion, but then the skeptic on this quiz show, he says, or is implying throughout, that the Bible is filled with apparent contradictions, and he still holds to this stance to this day. Now, whenever you and I, as Christians, whenever we hear of these alleged contradictions, we immediately hear them, and if we're learned in Scripture, we say, oh, that's total nonsense. That's not a contradiction whatsoever, and it's very simple to explain. So this leads one to wonder, why do others outside of Christianity gather that these are contradictions? And then they begin to claim, well, the Bible is full of mistakes, therefore it can't really be talking about the true God, and so forth. Well, Jesus, I believe, explains this. In Matthew 13:9, he just gets done telling the people a parable. And just like the Scripture to an atheist, these parables really confused people. They were like riddles to them. They said, well, we don't understand anything that this person's saying, therefore. And he gets done with the parable and says, who hath ears to hear, let him hear. That doesn't literally mean whoever has ears, let him hear. Of course they will, if they're not deaf. But it means whoever understands, whoever is able to understand, understand. And the disciples came and said unto him, why speakest thou unto them in parables? He answered and said unto them, because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it is not given. For whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and he shall have more abundance. But whosoever hath not, meaning that saving faith in God, but whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken away even that he hath. Therefore speak I to them in parables, because they seeing see not, and hearing they hear not, neither do they understand. And in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, which saith, by hearing ye shall hear, and shall not understand, and seeing ye shall see, and shall not perceive. Meaning this, that whenever an atheist in whom will be dead set against God either way, God knows his heart, he also knows his future, he knows whether he'll believe or not, so God doesn't give him that grace in order to understand the Scripture. Remember how it says at the end of Luke's Gospel, how Jesus, He gave them then understanding. God himself gives understanding in order to understand the scriptures. For this people's heart is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and should understand with their heart, and should be converted, and I should heal them. God does not want a hater of him, in whom he knows and whom loves him and hates him. Scripture makes very clear on that. But he does not want someone that hates him to spend all eternity with him. It's then in mockery that this host of this quiz show, Bible Contradictions, it's then in jest that the host gives the final prize to the winner, which was a lifetime of believing in a promise with no evidence, which you're only able to receive after you die. This always shocks me about atheists. They say, where's evidence of your God? Well, look at creation and you'll see a creator. Scripture even tells us this, Romans 1:20, for the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened.